be dancing in the streets, dancing at his feet, dancing in the streets of gold. We'll be dancing in the streets, dancing at his feet, dancing in the New Jerusalem. And we will sing Kadosh, Kadosh to the Lord of hosts, joining in the angels' choir, and forever we will be.
Well, welcome to the next chapter. I'm your host, Sandi Craig, and I will be joined by others here shortly. But we want to say thank you for joining us. Here you get some truth about life right here and how to deal with things that might arise in your life even. So it's a great place to be. And if you would like and share, that would be amazing. Our topic of conversation today is we're going to be talking about fear. And fear is probably something that we all have had to fight back in the days that have passed and maybe even in the days to come. But we do know, just to start it, that Yahweh did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and of a sound mind. And we need to remember that. Trust in him is far more important. But we're not doing that part of the show yet. No, we're not. My name is Sandi Craig, and my husband and I pastor a congregation in Amarillo, Texas, named Life of Worship. And we meet throughout the week. But specifically, if we talk about our Shabbat services, our Saturday services, we meet at 2 p.m. for our Torah portion Central Time. We're on Zoom, and you can always join us with that. And then we meet at 5 p.m. for our regular encounter services. And there is ministry and more teaching on the Torah portion or whatever Yahweh has led us to do, as well as worship and ministry. And you can join us there on YouTube Live on our YouTube channel. Just go to Life of Worship Amarillo and subscribe and hit the bell so that you always know when we're coming on, whether you can come live or not. So that's a few things. We also do Monday morning war room prayers here on this network, as well as Let Us Reason Together on Mondays as well, 8:45 a.m. Central, and Walking in Spirit and Truth on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central. So there's a few things, but I'm not alone, of course, on this show. Never have been. If it's just me, we're not having a show. Anyway, just to let you know. So we're never going to be alone on this show. There's always going to be a group of us together. And you probably are going, whew, I'm so glad about that. Well, anyway, my first guest, or not guest, my first co-host is G.I. Joe, the Hebrew from Toledo, Ohio. And we are so glad that you've joined us here on the next chapter. Also, she does the War Room prayers as well. And hello.
Hello. It's a good day.
It is a good day. It is a good day.
It's a very good day. Keep that armor on.
Isn't that right now? Keep the armor on. For sure. So that's what she's telling us. And we're going to have a whole show probably about that. And Joe, you're going to bring us a homeschool segment today too, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's going to be amazing. So we also have with us Sherry Flannigan from Ashland, Mississippi, host of His Great Name. She does the War Room as well as chapter. And she also does our once a month conferences, or our conferences that happen on days of notable days. There you go. Hello, Sherry.
You're muted.
Sorry, I was trying to keep down the background noises while you were talking. Our next one is Purim, and it's going to be fun, fun, fun.
You heard it here, folks. You don't want to miss the Purim show. That's for sure.
The Purim party.
Purim party.
And it's a real party. We got games and stuff, I think. We're working on it now.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So everybody, why don't you put that in your notes, note it, and be ready to join us for that live Purim party. And also, I know who will always is the center and life of a party. It's our founder. It is the visionary of Messianic Lamb Video Network. It is Mr. Mark David Smith, right there from North Carolina, who is ready all the time as well, because he keeps the cogs rolling. Yeah. Sherry's getting it. That's right. Hello, Mark.
Because I can.
Because you can. Because you do.
Yeah, I do because I can. If I can do it, I'm going to do it. I don't know bad. I only know good. So if I can do it, I'm going to do it. That's right.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy, for the Rawhide song now. My
I
husband
know,
watches
getting your
that
head-
show. So it's now it's in the mind going, rolling, rolling, rolling.
Don't do it because it's going to get stuck in
Joe, there are worse tunes to be caught in your head. I'll tell you for sure.
You know, there was a CD that came out years ago. Tora Tillestein, I think is the name of it. It's been years. Rolling, rolling, rolling. Keep that Torah rolling, rolling. Let the Torah ride. It was songs that they took and put other words to.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
It's really fun. It's a fun CD.
fun deal.
That was for when Simchat Torah.
Yeah. Keep it going. Hey, I have a question. Where is America's real middle of nowhere? Where is it?
Kansas.
Hey,
I'm sorry. I drove through that and I got so excited when I saw a tree.
yeah. We drove through Kansas one time, and about 3 hours into it, I looked out the side and said, "Didn't we just pass that field?"
Exactly.
So, does anybody else have an idea where the middle of nowhere might be?
There's a lot of good folks in Kansas, so it couldn't be in the middle of nowhere.
There you go.
There's people there. It's inhabited.
It's inhabited. Well, I will say this. When someone says the middle of nowhere, where is that? A travel blog decided to find out, and some basic criteria included the furthest place from water, the smallest town where nothing happens, and the furthest place from a gas station, and the furthest place from a city with a Starbucks. The absolute 100% most remote location in the world is Point Nemo in the South Pacific Ocean. But in the U.S., it's Lebanon, Kansas.
And now it's not the place to nowhere because everybody knows where it is. So
There you go.
there you have it.
And it says it claims to
Same
be
status.
Lebanon, Kansas claims to be the center of the U.S., smack dab between the Atlantic and Pacific. But that's not the furthest place from an ocean because it's still near to the Gulf of Mexico. The absolute furthest place from an ocean is Langdon, North Dakota. So,
Well, let me tell you what. I've been in Lebanon and actually have some friends that live very, very, very close to Lebanon, and it's not bad looking country around there. But I'm in North Carolina, and the top of the list for being in North Carolina is because I just got so sick and tired of looking at Kansas and Oklahoma, which really has nothing to look at. But North Carolina has a lot to look at. So,
Well,
yeah.
sorry, Ohioans. It's flat and it's swampland where I'm at.
well, me, it's farmland and it's flat relatively and not a lot of trees, but it has its own beauty. So there you go. I think every place has its own beauty.
Has its own what?
Beauty.
Beauty.
Oh,
B-E-A-U-T-Y.
beauty. All right. Well, maybe I need to go put my hearing aids on or turn the speakers up. So
I have one more question, and then my little news attack will be over. Do you guys know how to have a happier marriage?
I think all of us have the happiest marriage we want, Sandy.
Well-
So you're speaking to our audience and not to the three of
Okay.
us, so.
Well, this, by the way, is the opinion of the people that took the survey. But it says, here's a simple way to have a happier marriage. Touch each other while sleeping. In a study in the University of Hertfordshire, 94% of couples who actually, didn't sleep in separate beds or, in that king side bed where one's a mile from the other, they said, no, get close to each other, anyway, Touch each other while you're sleeping, and you'll be happier. For couples who are hands off and arms and legs and toes, only 68% were happy. The strongest warm, fuzzy feelings came from couples who slept less than an inch apart. More than 30 inches spelled bad news.
Whatever.
I can't do an inch apart.
You know what I say about marriages?
What?
There are two kinds, because you're talking about sleeping, okay? There's two kind of people in the world. There are those that jump up out of the bed at 5 in the morning and they got their house clean before 6. Then there are those who get up and feel their way down the hall to the coffee pot, okay? And one is usually married to the other because God has a sense of humor and he wants to work out everything in our life.
Well, but not only that, you'll find the same opposites. One of us doesn't want covers on. One other wants 5 blankets. And to be an inch from him with 5 blankets on is miserable.
You're sweating. You feel like you're in the tropics.
Therefore, it's not an inch. It's much further than an inch because those blankets come a creeping. So it's opposite.
Mine is a fan. I have a fan going. You really got to have that fan. It's like you got those blankets. I've got the fan.
Well, my husband came home last night.
Compromise.
And to me, it was hot in the house. So it's 20 degrees outside. I opened that window and cooled that room off fast. It's still open. And he comes in and he's like, oh, and I'm like, oh, that feels so great.
Yeah. I have the fan below here going because he turned the heater up. He just woke up about 20 minutes ago and he turns the heater up. So I've got the fan going and it's hot in here.
All I can do is sit here and smile. I have no response to anything anybody's saying.
That's
Poor
okay.
Bob, I tell him, if you're cold, put on a sweater.
So I take it that
Bob, I said,
it's
you
a
can
male.
put on something and get warm. I just can't take off everything to get cool.
That's right. Maybe it's a male female thing, we as ladies, because it seems like all three of us want it cold while we're sleeping. Although I must say my husband likes it cold when he's sleeping too, because when I haven't done something like open up the window, he still does it. And when he likes to have it cold, but then he likes to put all the blankets on. I'll just put it that way. That's what
he's being kind to you.
He is.
He's showing his love for you, opening the window and freezing just for you.
It's right. Anyway, that's my news attack for the day. Nothing silly stuff that we just talked about. Just not something to write home about, but there you go.
I wanted to know on Joe and the boxes. Now, to me, and you guys know me and what, I built a tiny house. And so my question to Joe is, in my thought process, it can mean one of two things. Either you just don't have a clue how to downsize, or this is your downsizing and those boxes will eventually disappear. So you don't have to answer the question, but you see what I'm saying? It could go one way or the other. It's like I'm boxing it up because I'm never throwing it away and I'm going to keep it forever, or I'm boxing it up because I am downsizing. So
I have been boxing things up and seeing what I can live without. And if I can live without it, it's out of here.
Check it out. Joe, wow. I knew there was something I liked.
Except for the blue boxes back there. That's my yarn. He ain't touching it.
Okay.
That's my yarn. I do use that stuff. So.
Well, let me tell you, I used to teach a class on downsizing, and I will tell you, that goes right along with what you're saying. The understanding is that you should go through your house and put everything in boxes. That's every room, including the living room. Put everything in boxes that you don't use every day and put them all in the middle of the floor. Then after a month, if you've taken things out of the box to use, you're good. You can keep that. Then either put the boxes in storage or get rid of that stuff because you really don't need them, and that's including the bathroom, the bedroom. And let me tell you what, we're ones that did that, and we lived in a tiny house, 192 square feet for 2.5 years, and we would trade it for anything. We live in a bigger house now, and I'm constantly looking around going, look at all this stuff that we've accumulated because we have the room.
Yeah.
You know, literally you accumulate because you have the room.
Exactly. I've gotten rid of close to 10 boxes.
Yeah.
I have in store. We have a storage unit because we have a motorcycle, but we have children's toys, and I've decided to call my kids and say, okay, you've been telling me to keep these Hot Wheels. You've been telling me to keep these Z-Bots and all that. If you want them, you come get them, or I'll mail them to you and you pay them shipping, because I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a huge box of Hot Wheels. Granted, I love Hot Wheels. They're fun, especially for science and, motion and everything. But my son has has 2 kids, and y'all divide the Hot Wheels. Let's get things going.
My mom did that to us, and she said, guys, come get your stuff. And I have my knitting machine, my dolls. I have my doll clothes, my Barbies, and my Glopper, and all of my all the stuff. My grandmother made me, Grandma Shinkas, she would get, I guess, like Downy bottles or something with that color, and she would crochet on the top of them, and they'd be purses. And I have all of that stuff, and it's in my attic. And yeah,
you're telling me you were a Barbie girl?
I did have Barbies, and my mom was such a seamstress. Every bit of clothes, I'm telling you, she would. I don't have any store-bought clothes for any of my stuff. It's all stuff she made, and she would put special buttons and sequins on things. I mean, she was meticulous. So I have the nicest clothes for my Barbies and dolls ever, and Amarai doesn't get to touch them yet. No.
You would hate my Barbies. Get these Barbies. I'd hack their hair off because I wanted them to be G.I. Joes.
No, my brother had
literally.
So
I was not a Barbie person. Barbie would go in the mud and everything. My mom would look at me and goes, "Really? What are you doing?" It's like I played in the mud with my brother.
I believe it.
We would take the army men and stuff, and take the rubber bands between your fingers and paper and go, or little pebbles, and play war. And I wanted a G.I. Joe.
Well,
and then
you can't tell me when Sandy and John are on together, sitting by side, they are not. You can't tell me they're not the most perfect Barbie and Ken you've ever seen. They really, their tagline should say Barbie and Ken.
Oh, maybe we'll do that next time.
I agree. I think you should.
That's funny. Well,
I'm sitting here thinking, did I have any toys when I can't.
Oh, come on, Sherry.
Really and truly, what I'm thinking of, I read a lot. I really like to read, so I read a lot. And if we played with toys, it was like with the other kids, and we get a cardboard box and put it down. We were inventive, I guess you'd say. Well, I really can't remember if I had a badminton set, and we played badminton a lot, but that was really toys. I mean, I know I had them, but
I had
with them.
Our favorite thing,
imagination games. You be the cowboy, I'll be the Indian, and we, whatever, that kind of thing.
Our favorite game growing up, though, our favorite game growing up as kids was before I got sick, because I was sick by the age of 11, so I could no longer play outside or do anything because I couldn't move. Like I said, it took an hour for me to get up the strength to walk 10 feet to the bathroom. So before 11, I would my brother, I mean, we would play outside, and we lived in the country at one point, and they had these old barns, and we would have treasures. And then he put 3 sand piles in his backyard, our landlord. And so we had wars with the sand, and that stuff was fun. Before I got sick, that stuff was fun. So
yeah, we skateboarded down the street.
oh,
My dad would get so mad at me because we would sit two kids on a skateboard and go down. You'd be like pulling and everything, and you'd end up with road rash, and Dad would come home and he goes, "Told you not to do that because you'd end up getting hurt." Yeah, and I had skinned knees and everything, and I go to Catholic school with a skirt and skinned knees.
isn't it great though to have those memories? We can do all
Today,
show
you
on
don't
that,
see
but
that.
that's not what our show is about. Okay, now we've got to stop going down memory lane because it is time for what? Our homeschool segment. So stay tuned for this.
So you've been homeschooling since September or August or June, whenever. Some people do it year round. You've been homeschooling, and it's that time of year. It's January. It's time to look back at what you've done and to see what works, what doesn't work. Some things work for certain children. Some things work for other children. You may have more than one child. Some people have only one child, and it's easy for them to determine. When you have like I had 3, you have to determine what type of person or what type of learner they are, especially this year. If you are just starting out homeschooling this year and you're finding out, or, September, the school year, and you're finding out a little bit more about your child, you're finding out this child's hands-on, this child is a bookworm, and they're kind of separated. That's okay. You can still gather them together. You just have to do it a little bit differently. You have to tweak some things. And guys, if it doesn't work, get rid of it. Don't make it a burden. So many homeschoolers that I have seen have taken curriculum and have made it a burden. Now, Mark, I'm going to use your daughter for an example because I had such a fun time seeing something that she was doing with the 2 boys, and it was Math UC. I love Math UC. It's a hands-on math thing. She was talking about how much she loved it and how her boys are loving it, and it works for them. And that's what you got to look at, especially at the ages that these children are. They're younger children. And you want to find out if your child's hands-on, because they will not learn if they're a hands-on child, especially with math. You're not going to sit there and take a book and open a book and sit them down and say, okay, now let's do our arithmetic. Some kids can't handle that. Some kids need that Math UC kind of thing where you sit there and you see and you take the little blocks to count, to do the addition, and then later on it shows the multiplication. Another way to do with math, and I'm just using math as an example, you can do this with many other subjects, taking dice and teaching the kids to throw 2 dice at a time, so they're learning their multiplication. Like they throw the dice and it's 2 3s. Well, 2 times 3, because it's 2 dice, equals what? And you explain to them why it equals 6 and why you're doing 2 times. And they're seeing it and they're hearing it and they're feeling it. And, but then there's some kids that are into the Saxon math. They love Saxon. I had a Saxon math kid. Drove me nuts because he liked to open that book and he did great. You give him the book, he learned it. Boom. He was a book learner. Then you had the other one who he was the one that was the Math UC kid and the dice and everything. And then you had the third one. She was a mixture of all. And what was nice about that is I could take the older one and I could bring him to the younger one to help. And we need to remember that too. You need to have your child sometimes help the other child because they learn when they're teaching. And we need to remember that. And so when you're going through your stuff and you find that this is not working, go sell that curriculum and use that money to buy what will work for you and continue on. And remember, don't be fearful. And you think, because I know many homeschoolers, and Sandy, you're probably one of them too, that was like, am I teaching him everything? Is he following everything? Is he learning everything? Well, FYI, guys, nobody knows everything. Everybody knows a little bit of something. And when we gather together, we learn from each other. So right now, what I have for today is just go back through your year, check out what works and what doesn't work. And don't be afraid to get rid of it if it doesn't work. It's that simple.
Well, I think that's great advice. The Matthew C and all of it. I think my son sort of did all. He was like the combination, like your daughter, although hands-on was very important. I think hands-on should be applied a little bit for every student, though, because there's something about doing an activity that's related to what you're learning, whether it's even watching a movie sometimes, or building, or going for the walk, or going to the factory, or doing. There's something that reinforces whatever you're learning.
Well, when you bring them together, I would bring them together. Like I had 3, so I would bring them together to do things together that was hands-on. And yeah, I had days and moments, guys. I'm telling you, as a homeschooler, and I graduated 3, and 2 of them went to college, and one of them is in the United States military, and it looks like he might have made chief.
Woo-hoo.
They were all homeschooled, and I thought that I was failing them. And then come to find out, no, I didn't fail them. I educated them to the best of their ability, and I did according to the scriptures, which says to train up a child in the way they should go. And that's the most important thing.
Well, I love it. I love it. And it's a great encouragement, because it is that time of year. Even with Amariah, I'm like, okay, we're going to dig in a little bit more. Because she's going to be 3 at the end of January, and it's the perfect time to dig in a little deeper. And yesterday, trying to get her to read, we were reading, and we were going over our letters, and she knows some of her letters and she doesn't know some of her letters, some other ones, but she fought me for a few minutes, and then we're getting back into gear. But we should be homeschooling. You should be teaching your child from the minute that child's born. They're learning and growing. We need to take advantage of that time. And anyway, thank you, Joe, for that homeschool segment. I appreciate it. And did any of you have anything you wanted to chime in with real quick before we go to the news?
Well, the only thing I was thinking of along the lines of what you were saying is that when we combining both of you, like what you said, Sandy, we should be teaching our kids from the moment they're born, which we do. And I think most everybody does, start. It's what we do. We're going to have kids. We love kids. We want to teach them. And then we send them off to school, and sending them off to school is that structured thing that is put together based on having many kids in one place. So you have to have a structure that's based on time limits. For instance, you go to school on certain days, you go to certain times, each class is a different time, and so on and so forth. And then it only goes from, say, September to, March or whatever. And then you get 3 months off, and it's all set up that way because it has to be set up that way, because you're working with a lot of people, adults that are working with a lot of kids. And if you didn't have a structure put together, it would just be chaos. So that structure has to be there, and you have to have a little vacation in the middle of it. So, all that is right. It's good. It's the way it's supposed to be. But when you're homeschooling, from what I understand with Sarah, and it's been a long time since we homeschooled Sarah. Both the boys went all the way through public school, but in homeschooling Sarah, I kind of slightly remember that we didn't really follow to the public school pattern of when you did homeschooling, when you did your schooling, when did you take your breaks, when did you take your vacation, all that type of thing. So it's more of like right now, I know Sarah, even through the summer months, she's got specific things that they have to work on. I mean, the rest of the world in public school is all out on school vacation, but the homeschooling kids are working on different projects. Maybe it's not a full-time thing, maybe it is, because you don't have to have that structured thing based on having multiple people, multiple teachers, multiple students, multiple staff, that type of thing. So that's my thought in what both of you were talking about. That's just my little ad.
Well, you know what? Learning.
It's a given.
Learning is not really supposed to be scheduled. I mean, yes, with a public school system, they have to have that schedule because of so many people. But learning is an everyday thing. It should be an everyday thing.
Sure.
And I like what my dad said. He says, "Yeah, I'm 82 years old, but I'm still young because I'm still learning."
Right.
I love that.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
That's really good.
Exactly.
You know, when we go through life, just like you talk about Emma Ryan, how you're cooking with her, and you'll go, this is a half, this is, you know, the different measurements and things. I'm never a person who can learn by abstract concepts. I've got to be able to apply it. How does that work? And so when you're talking about it in homeschool and then you turn around and you're doing it and applying what you're learning in your homeschooling, it really solidifies with the kids. Whereas like when you're in a school setting, they are teaching in a sense abstractly. They're teaching in an abstract concepts, you know, and so it was, that's kind of where I come from. There were times I look back, like I was going to learn the piano, and they'd say, every good boy does fine. All cows eat grass. You know, that's the lines and the spaces. Well, nobody told me it was A, B, C, D, E, F, G. When I figured that out on my own, it, you know, I'm going like, okay, I learned better that way than trying to give me some kind of, you know, but everybody's different. And that's what Joe is saying too. Everybody's different. How is your child? And a teacher is going to gear it generically rather than specifically for the children. So the homeschooling, that's why children actually who are homeschooled come out a lot more well-rounded than they do in school. They'll only learn, you know. So it all works. I mean,
That's right. That's right.
Because
Well,
I know there are people out there, like in my situation, I couldn't homeschool. I was
Right.
too busy trying to make a living and keep food on the table and the roof over our head. So I just couldn't, but I did what I could, you know. So
Right.
it is what it is.
It is. Well, thank you everybody for that homeschool segment. It's time for the news. Well, I have an article that I found on Charisma News, and it is an older article, but I think it still applies today. Actually, they reposted it because I asked for things within the last week, but it's 7,000 churches fasting and praying over terrifying new persecution law. And like I said, it's been in actually for a couple of years, but it applies, and it might be a window to things to come. I don't know. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed an anti-terrorism law, but for the country's many churches, the signature sparked demand for prayer and fasting. The bill toughens punishment for acts deemed to be terrorism and for the organization of mass unrest. It would also introduce prison sentences for up to a year for those who fail to report such crimes as these. Foreign guests are not permitted to speak in churches unless they have a work permit from Russian authorities. If a friend or relative from outside Russia wishes to share his or her faith in your home, the guest will be fined and expelled from Russia. Any discussion of God with non-believers is considered missionary activity and will be punishable. Missionary activity will be permitted by special government permission. Example, if one traveling on a train shares his faith without permission, the offender will be taken into police custody for the duration of the journey and will be fined a specific fine. about $1,000. Offenders from the age of 14 will be prosecuted and are subject to prosecution. Religious activity is no longer permitted in private homes. Most churches meet in their homes. So think about that. You're not allowed to have any religious activity in your home. Every citizen is obligated to report religious activity of their neighbors to the authorities. Failure to be an informant is punishable by law. And one may pray, read the Bible at home, but not in the presence of a non-believing person. You will be breaking the law and punished. And if the church has purchased property, it cannot be converted to a place of worship. And that's if they have purchased property. And finally, in church buildings, it's not permitted to invite people to turn to God. Worship services are permitted, but making a non-believer a follower of Christ is against the law. So in response, thousands of churches have called and said, let's cry out to the Lord. It says here, the church is appalled at the news of the law. Of course they were. And Putin signed that repressive new law, and it violates not only human rights, but common sense. The dark days for Russia, that's from Edward Snowden. And what's more, critics are now declaring the Yarovaya laws, aka Big Brother laws, as a sign of the end times. And of course, it's sort of, it says in the word that we will be persecuted. So many wonder why Russia's already excessively harsh criminal laws are being made harsher. And this legislation has come from the Presidential Human Rights Council, which has highlighted ways in which the proposed amendments directly contradict the Constitution and existing laws. The criticism has been almost entirely ignored. And the government has long used the fight against terrorism and extremism to justify repressive laws, no matter how obviously senseless they may be. As a result, Russia's statutory framework can now be effectively used to target not only credible extreme threats, but also political opponents of the state. So we see some reminiscent activity already beginning here, as many have been moved off Facebook and YouTube and other platforms this very week. And it has been happening for a while, but it's being done en masse right now. And so I just found this article. I just thought we needed to rehearse or rehash or be put in remembrance of things that have happened in other places throughout the world when communism, Nazism, socialism is put in place and in power, and the vestiges of what we have known could be going towards this direction instead of freedom of speech and the freedom of the press, and for freedom to peaceably assemble, and the freedom to worship our God. And it's pretty severe. It's a pretty much of a wake-up call. And we need to not ignore what's happened in other places of the world because we're so wrapped up in what's happening in our own country, because sometimes that can be a roadmap to our future as well. Anyway, jump in, everybody, if you want. We have just a few minutes. So,
the Spanish Inquisition in 1492, you didn't just have the Jews being removed from Spain. You also had believers that believed in the whole scriptures from Genesis to Revelation and were following Torah, but they weren't Jewish. And they were thrown in jail. They were persecuted. They were tortured and everything. And then you have now in Southern California, you have my mother's group of 10 people are, they still get together, but they had one of them where they would go to different houses. Okay. And one of them, neighbor, called the police on them because there were 10 people at their house. And California has these really strict laws today where, because of the China virus, we cannot have that many people. And that means y'all now need to be quarantined, blah, 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 blah. Well, they didn't abide by that law because, in fact, the guy that was doing the teaching, that Torah teaching that day, looked at the police officer and says, If it goes against Yahovah's word, I will not comply to what you have to say, sir. I am sorry. And that was, some of the people in that group got a little fearful on that because they're thinking, great, now we're going to get arrested. Well, they didn't. They just got a warning. And it is happening here. It is starting to happen here. If you see something, say something is going around here in Toledo. See something, say something. So we need to stand firm in his word, and we need to trust in him, because things are going to get tougher and tougher. We're going to start. We think this is uncomfortable. Well, we haven't lived like the others have lived.
No, I know Dina Dye posted something yesterday on MeWe where she said we need to start looking for underground places where we can possibly gather. And that's probably a true statement. Don't wait till it's here. Prepare ahead of time.
Just like Joseph.
Right. Because if we wait until they come out, knock on our door,
it's too late. I mean, look at you can even look at Corrie ten Boom and her story and what they did to prepare so that they could bring in Jews into their home and hide them. It took preparation. They had to build the special room to put those Jews in, to hide them when things happened. They had to practice. Also, I don't know if y'all read the book or saw the movie, but she even talked about it in one of the conferences I went to as a young teenager. She said, we practiced and we practiced and we practiced. And she says, we need to do that with God's word as well. We need to practice and practice and practice, because guess what? We're not going to be perfect until we're with him.
It's true.
Well, the only time I'm muted is when I'm on this show. Let me just start out with that. And I would hope and pray. I mean, they couldn't shut me up at work. So, I wasn't stupid about it. But, it's just like I would get the conversation around to something about the Lord in the course of the conversation that a lot of times they started. So, they're like, oh gosh, here she comes. Let's break up. But, this is not new. There is nothing new under the sun. This is not new. If you read Acts 4, they told them not to preach in there. They tried to shut up the early believers. You know what they did? They prayed. And you know what happened? This was their prayer. And now, Lord, look at their threats and grant to your bondservants to speak your word with all confidence, with all boldness, while you extend your hand to heal, and signs and wonders take place through the name of your holy servant, Yeshua. And when they had prayed, the place where they had gathered together was shaken. They were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak the word of the Lord with boldness. And if that's what, that's what we should be doing anyway, because we can speak the word and have had the ability to speak the word in freedom. Whereas most countries like Pakistan, they'll kill you. Yet people over there still speak. We need to be speaking that word boldly, because we're to be light and salt wherever we are. And let me tell you, if we read the history of our ancestors, anytime there's been persecution, the believers grow. It has the opposite effect of what the devil wants. It's when we get fat, happy, lazy, and comfortable that the word, the gospel of the kingdom doesn't go forth. But when that persecution comes, the Holy Ghost, we'll rise up, we'll seek the Lord, we press into him, and we go forward in his name. So it'll backfire on the devil.
Very good, Mark.
Well, yeah, no truer statement than, this is not the first time. I mean, its history is just packed full of all of these type of things, but I am consistently reminded that America has been had it pretty easy compared to so many different other places on this planet since 9/11. And even before 9/11, there wasn't that many things that had happened compared to the way other countries people have to live. And we're talking about civilized people. It's not like going to Africa where there's just famine and there's, extremely poor conditions and they're living on dirt and that's the only life they know. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about literally civilized, very maintained communities have had to live through things that we're just tipping on the edge of what we all kind of think may happen in the very near future. Hey, it may take a little while for it to go into effect too, but I think it's I think it's something that we all need to recognize and take a look at and pray about, because we have had it so easy for so long. Not that it's that's wrong. I mean, the way we have it and have been living is perfectly right. It's good. We're supposed to be living in freedom like we are, but also freedoms also afford people to do wrong too. And there is so little self-control. I mean, you can go into 1,000 different areas, but I often think about this because I'm guilty of it. In hearing stories on the news or hearing stories of things that have happened in the past, and what can I say or do? But man, that's too bad they had to go through that. And then I'll go to my refrigerator and get out whatever I want to eat, or I'll go to the store and buy whatever I want to buy. And I can drive around and I can go to the beach, I can do whatever I want to do. Then I come home and I see on the news where, people are being put in detention camps, and I'm going, man, what a bummer. Boy, I sure feel bad for those people. And then I go to my refrigerator and I get out what I want to get to eat. Then I go to, you see what I'm saying is that we're all guilty of this. Yes, I pray about it. And yes, I pray for these people. But then how do you know how to pray about certain situations like that unless you've gone through it yourself? And I lived on the street. I was a homeless person by choice for 10 months in my life. I definitely say by choice, because I had places to go, just like 80% of everybody that is homeless. 80% of all homeless people have a place to go. They choose to be homeless. So I can say to this because I've lived that way. I've lived where I sleep behind dumpsters every night, and where I haven't had something to sleep on, and it's been the ground and or park benches and stuff. I can speak to this because I have. Yet still, when everything's going great, you fall right back into the rut. So that's what I've got to say to that.
Comfort.
You're muted, Sandy. Sandy muted.
When persecution hits the people of Yahweh, then we tend to grow spiritually and in number. And persecution hurts, and we haven't felt it really yet at all. It's just beginning. So is there any last word any of you want before we go to our main segment?
Just stay in the word, stand in his strength, praise him, pray, and be in that armor. So
that's the good last word. All right. So we are, do we have
I'm just going to play our regular intro so it helps me identify where we're at.
All right.
Okay. Be back after this.
Here we go.
We'll be dancing in the streets, dancing at his feet, dancing in the streets of gold. We'll be dancing in the streets, dancing at his feet, dancing in the New Jerusalem.
All right. Speaking of fear, um, there's so many different ways to go. And if you've watched me teach on anything, a lot of my teachings have to do with definitions so that we're all on the same accord. I think this is one word that we can all use, that we all understand, and there's just not that many ways to go from the word fear. Fear is that which causes us to feel in a negative way towards an object, an event, the things that are happening in our life, the things that are not happening in our life. And so when I think of fear, there are so many different ways to go, and I'm sure that when we start talking about this, we'll go into a lot of different ways. One of the things that we've been talking about on the show is how we forget the things that have happened in our lives before, whether or not it happens to somebody else, or whether or not it happens across the world, or it happens to us personally. And fear can develop from not knowing what is going to happen in the future. And I think that and you know, in my years of being taught religiously in churches, in synagogues, in all different ways, the number one thing that comes to mind is fear is the opposite of faith. I really have thought about that a lot, because I've heard it so many times that in a way, yes, but in a lot of ways, no. Fear and faith are two completely different things. To me, it's more of a there's a couple of different kinds of fear, but more than anything else to me is the word confidence. And as we have confidence, which confidence is developed, by the way, it's developed by your lifestyle and how you are taught, the direction you're taught, that type of thing. And for me, confidence comes from my understanding of things and my applying the wisdom from that understanding and life results. And so as we grow in confidence of who we are and where we're going, and of course there's the other word, hope, we, as long as we have the right hope and not a fake hope, that confidence can grow. And so as we have confidence in who we are and what we can do, to me, hope abides. It abides within it. It grows and it lives within us. And that in itself develops confidence, and confidence in who you are also portrays as you live your life, and it portrays as you see things. It's how you see things in front of you. I've known, you know, I mean, sometimes it's described as arrogance. I've known people, and I've even been described, I see it within myself, an arrogance, in that you act a certain way, or you speak to people with a confidence so much that it comes off as arrogance, which means that you have an overconfident, and you don't think you portray it to somebody else as though they are lower than you. And of course, that goes into a whole different understanding there. But I have known people that it seemed as though nothing ever bothered them for any reason. I know people now, I can think of a couple of people where it's just like, it doesn't make any difference what somebody says or bullies them or speaks to them or talks down to them. It just doesn't affect them. At least that's the way it looks. It looks as though they have such confidence in who they are that there's nothing that can be said or done that will cause that person to falter or to look at things a different way. When you get to know the couple of people I'm thinking about, these people really have more fear in certain areas of their life than probably the average person does, but they've been able to develop in their life a confidence in who they are and how they walk, that they don't show that fear. And so even within my life, I do have confidence because I have developed certain things that the Lord has just allowed me to be able to do. And so when I go into something, and I can think of something on, for instance, on the website that I've needed to have done, and I got a person that was involved in the company come in and show me a few things, and it helped me to understand it. But I had already tried it 3 different times, and now to go back and do it, I had a fear of going back in to do it because I didn't have the confidence. I couldn't figure it out. And most everybody that knows me knows I created the Lamb Network. I built the Lamb Network. If you remember the Lamb Radio, that was like 14 different things that had to all work together to be able to just broadcast. I built that from scratch. So I built the confidence in me, and I didn't have a fear of it. I knew everything would eventually work out. Every once in a while, I have a fear because of different things, because they don't work out, and I need this to happen. So it's, to me, when I think of fear, I think of confidence. I think of whether or not I know or have a hope that that's going to happen. Now, one of the things that we all were talking about the other day, Sandy and John and I and a couple other people were talking about, was things that have happened in the past that has to do with a mass fear of people that, for instance, and I brought up the example because I just watched a documentary and then went and did some research on this, and taking it back to the witch trials in Massachusetts. And it's the most incredible thing of how one person can come in and cause a perpetual misunderstanding of something that will cause fear. And what it came down to, as I was thinking about and watching this documentary and seeing how these accusations of people that were highly influenced by one person, and this one person influenced many people, that it just perpetually spread so wide, only because these people literally didn't have a confidence in who they were. And these were religious people, so they didn't have a confidence or a fear of the Lord, a respect for the Lord, in that they didn't go to the Lord and let the Lord sort it out. Instead, they let other people do it. And when you use that process, which is against God in itself into letting somebody else steer how you're going to go. If you let people do that instead of God to set your course, there's no way you can have confidence. You're not going to have confidence in yourself, and you're not going to have confidence in others, because people fail. Everybody fails. I was talking to Joe earlier, before War Room this morning, and she was talking about how she did a couple of stupid things, and stupid things like falling on the ice and cutting her finger. Joe, it's like, come on, everybody's fallen on the ice. Everybody has cut their finger. You can't call it a stupid thing because everybody's done it. It's just the natural way of life. And a lot of times our thought process doesn't go to letting the Lord solve these things. Instead, we go to ourselves or to other people, and that's always going to fail. That always lessens the confidence. It lessens the respect. It lessens the hope. And that's always going to cause a fear. So that's the process I see it. I think back in the witch trials, once again, I don't think I've got, I looked it up and was going to give a little specific thing, but it's interesting in this documentary, it showed a timeline of how it started in one place and then grew. And it only showed me that literally it grew because people would not stand up against a lie and wouldn't stand up for it because they had a fear they were going to be accused themselves. Let me give you a small example. For instance, you could either be acquitted of being a witch or at least have your trial put off for a long length if you would accuse two other people of being a witch. Now tell me that's not fear of yourself being accused of being a witch. So people would give in to that fear by accusing two other people. It didn't make any difference. And then they'd have to stand there and watch those two people be hung on a tree. And it's kind of like, come on, you gotta know. And, we're looking here today at things that have happened in our country, including the coronavirus of last year. And it's amazing the fear that has risen up. And I have to admit, it was a bit within me and my family and, people that I know. But it didn't take long after going to the Lord and letting the Lord raise my confidence in who I am and what I have with the Lord that fear diminished. But it seems like every day Hasatan knows how to keep bringing in more and more things to try to cause fear. But as with everything else, if you and I've always given the definition of faith. Faith to me is if the Lord does something for me that I need him to do for me, and I remember that the next time I go to needing the Lord for something, I'm going to have faith in the fact that the Lord's going to do it because he's already done it for me, and I know that he will. And as things happen in our lives, as we grow with the Lord and the Lord takes care of things, then we have more faith. So in this way, it does work the same way on the opposite with fear. If you don't recognize all the things that the Lord has done for you in your life, you can't help but have fear. It's one way of the confidence level in how you're going to look at life and how you're going to live your life, into the opposite level of I'm going to have fear means everything's going to be a fear. So My last word is that I used to be a hellfire and damnation preacher. Everybody knows this, and we used to. There's a book in Titus. There's a passage that says, "Save some by fear." In our Bible, it was save everybody by fear. Tell them they're going to go to hell tomorrow if they don't repent today. And I mean, I actually have to laugh because it was kind of almost a joke, but it was really one of those things that in that book, in the way it's said, is not the way that it really is. You're not supposed to instill fear in somebody, but you have to let people know, but you have to let people know in a way that that fear is respect for the Lord and not in a negative way of no confidence. So there you go. That's what I've got. Anyway, so there you go.
All right. Ooh, Sherry, did you want to say anything? You're muted, sweetie.
See, I told you the only time y'all can shut me up is when I'm on the show. Anyway, you're exactly right, Mark. When something happens and we see the Lord move, it gives us more confidence. Even when we hear of how God moved in somebody else's life, it abates that fear that he's not going to move and gives us more confidence. And see, we don't have blind faith. We have faith based on the evidence, based on actually the character of God himself. We're not supposed to walk blindly. We look at him and say, this is your character. Therefore, I know for the honor of your name, you'll move in my behalf. And there are different kinds of fear. There's a healthy fear. I mean, you know, if I see a snake in the yard, I have a very healthy fear. I'm going to either run or I'm going to get a hoe or a machete or something and take care of business. We can have an irrational fear. There's irrational fears, which leads to hysterical fears, which is phobias. I used to be horribly afraid of spiders, and I won't go into the reason why, but I could see one across the room and just really start clenching my fist and I almost start trembling and break out in a sweat. And I really had to fight that fear, saying, I will not fear, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And then when it dawned on my little brain, I had dominance over it. When I got a fly swatter or a shoe, I took care of business. So there you have it. God we can overcome our fear in him. So the fear in the witch trials, it was fed. The fear in the witch trials in America was actually fed by the fear that they had learned in England. Now, a lot of people don't realize they had witch trials in England. And
Hundreds of people were killed.
You know, the Inquisition in Spain relied more on a different area than the witchcraft part. And I mean, if you were accused, you were just pretty well as good as dead, because they would either tie you to a chair, or there was one woman that had her thumb put on the opposite toe and tied up and dropped in water. If you floated, you were a witch, so they took you out and hung you. And if you sunk and you drowned, you weren't a witch, but that still didn't save your life. I mean, it was some, so I equate that to the emotion. Seems to be there is some hysterical fear going on now. There's a healthy fear that we see things coming at us like a freight train. But then there is some that have gone over into a hysterical fear. Well, he may do this. Well, this might happen. That might happen. We can't predict the future, but we know who is in the future and holds our lives. So we should rest on our faith in him, based on the evidence of his character, of our God's character, based on the evidence. And we pray that no matter come what may, that we have the boldness to speak forth his word, not be stupid. Nobody volunteers to go to jail or to be killed or whatever, but we don't want to run when we're supposed to make our stand for him. So that's really all I have to say. And it's very good, Mark, because, you know,
Let me respond, and once again, I can go into hours of details on all these subjects. But to me, for instance, when we say we have a fear of snakes, realistically, it's not a fear. It's a respect for the fact that we know what a snake can do in a negative form. So it's not real. Some people do have like arachnophobia and all that kind of stuff, and it goes into a really fear. But the initial idea of being scared of snakes or having a fear of snakes or things like that is more of a respect for knowing that what something negative like that can do. And that's the way I look at it. But you're right. And if it develops, then we've allowed it to go way past what it should be. So anyway, very good. Yes, thank you.
I have on my notes here, are you going to let fear control you or control your life? And if you do let fear control your life, then you're not going to have room for joy, peace, kindness, gentleness, and all of the fruits of the Spirit. And we need to remember that, because fear can cause us to, just like a warrior when he's in battle. Some warriors have done this. Some even military men have gone AWL and took off in the middle of wars and dropped their weapons, dropped everything, and ran because of fear of dying. And we have an example in 1 Samuel 17 where David goes out into feed his brothers, bring food to his brothers, and he sees what's going on, and the whole camp is fearful of this one big man. Just one big man they're fearful of. And David's like, what the heck's going on here? Well, David sat there and he didn't have fear because he had the full, and yes, I'm bringing the armor again, Sandy, because this is something that we need to be reminded. We keep forgetting that we have this, and this is why so many run in fear and get fearful of the things that are going on around us. He had the full armor of God on. He knew who his God was. He knew that God was going to take care of everything. And he went and faced a giant, a young man with a slingshot, mind you. He didn't have the man's armor. He didn't have a helmet on. He didn't have all the garb on. He had just a slingshot, probably a shepherd's staff, I would believe, because he's a shepherd. And he had a pocket full of stones. And there were 5 of them. And we know 4 were for the giant's other brothers, but also 5 were representing God's word, the foundation of God's word. And we need to remember that if we're his children, we have a foundation, we have his armor on, and we are covered from head to toe. It's that simple. I mean, we need to stop being fearful. And yes, Mark, I agree that there's everybody uses the word fear a little too often, just like faith, and saying, well, I'm fearful of getting burned, or I'm fearful of getting cut with a knife. It's not fear. It's you're showing the respect of what that item is for, right. Is what that is. Right. And it says throughout Scripture to fear the Lord. That means to respect and honor him.
That's exactly right.
That's what we have to remember.
Exactly right.
Well, I agree with everything you said, everybody has said. And I also want to, we're not going to discuss it now. It may have to be another show. But there is, when we say the spirit of fear, there literally is there are demonic things that can affect us as people that bring fear. And usually when you fear something, literally fear something, and you allow and you feed that, it will grow and manifest, and you'll fear more and more and more. And I like I said, this isn't a time to get into all of that because we're at the end of the show. But fear is a real thing. And in this day and this time, when we just comparing it to the witch trials, we have that very thing going on right here, right now. Turn in your neighbor. In fact, that's what sort of where we were going in the news a little bit. Turn in your neighbor, let them know, because there's fear. There's fear of disease. There's fear of man. There's fear of the government. There's fear of political parties. There's fear. There's just fear is rampant right now. And it is partly what is driving our society. And so I really like what you guys said. And I think we're going to explore this a little bit more next week. And I just appreciate everybody coming on. And you want to stay tuned, please like our show. And is there any last words somebody has? Nope.
Good.
All right.
Good.
All right. Well, until next week, then, every one of us say shalom.
Shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
We'll be